Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. Welcome to the final review of Rastakhan's Rumble cards. After this video I have reviewed all the cards in the set and you can find them on this YouTube channel. And in the coming days I will be talking a bit more about archetypes and decks, but one more time to just check out the cards. First up we have Arena Patron, a 5-mana 3/3 with overkill, summon another Arena Patron. And this is pretty hilarious throwback to the times of Grim Patron, which was a 5-mana 3/3, whenever this minion survives damage, summon another Grim Patron. And obviously Grim Patron was infinitely better than Arena Patron, because overkill can only trigger on your own turn, so whenever Arena Patron is attacked, no more Arena Patrons for you. What it would take to make this card actually viable would be some kind of a rush mechanic probably, so that you could just rush each Arena Patron into an opponent. But you don't have that sort of recurring rush in Hearthstone, with the exception of Houndmaster Shaw. Your other minions have rush, so then you could have Arena Patrons with rush, but that's probably not the sort of combo you want to pull off anyway. Then we have Arena Treasure Chest, a 4-mana 0/4 with a death rattle to draw 2 cards. So it costs more than an Arcane Intellect, it's slower than an Arcane Intellect, pretty useless. A more interesting card is Priest class card Orkanai Phantasm, a 2-mana 3/2 with a battle cry. This turn your healing effects deal damage instead. So there's a card in Wild right now called Embrace the Shadow, which was a 2-mana spell. This turn your healing effects deal damage instead. And that actually saw play in some combo decks, where you wanted to turn your healing into damage and then hit some face. And the effect is also similar to Orkanai Soul Priest, although the Orkanai Soul Priest effect lingers as long as the card is on the board. So Orkanai Phantasm, 2-mana, there's definitely potential in this one. Priest is always interested in being able to turn healing into damage, but right now there doesn't seem to be sufficient levels of support for it, because you're pretty much limited to Circle of Healing and Regenerate. So I don't see how this would work with the current card pool, but it's going to be in Standard for a long time, so there might be cards in the future that make this card a very, very viable card. A new minion with a hurtful battle cry, Booty Bay Buki, a 2-mana 3/3 with a battle cry to give your opponent a coin. Unfortunately that's not very good. Okay, it's great stat line for 2-drop of course, but it's not worthwhile to do something like recruiting for this one. Also giving your opponent a coin, so you can't disrupt something like a Megaton combo by giving them 1 free mana, so that doesn't work out. If they're playing control deck, maybe you can fill their hand and they will mill a card, but then they have 1 more mana to do nice things. So no matter how you look at it, it's just bad. This fellow on the other hand is interesting. It looks bad, but maybe it isn't. I haven't made up my mind yet. The Doukasen Marksman, a 2-mana 0/4 that has +4 attack while damaged. So if it takes 1 point of damage, you have a 2-mana 4/3 on the board, and that's very interesting. So if you combine this with something like an Overlord Sweep, or with a Blood Razor, or with some kind of whirlwind effects, you probably need something like that, so most likely Warrior is able to do things with this. But the question is, can you put enough of those effects into your deck so that you can actually reliably trigger this? Because if you can't trigger this very, very reliably, then it's just terrible. I can't currently see that kind of a deck where you would have enough whirlwind effects to use this, but if there is something like that, then this might be a powerful aggro card. Yet another weird epic card for 3 mana and 3/4 stat line. 3 mana, 3/4 stats, nothing to complain about there, that's a solid stat line. And the weird effect of the day from Drakari Trickster is Battle Cry, give each player a copy of a random card from their opponent's deck. That is mostly just weird. Because every mana slot has to have its fair share of 1/1s. Here's a new 1/1 for the 5-mana slot. 5 mana 1/1, form a champ. Battle Cry, summon a 5/5 hotshot. So obviously Another great card to play in just a regular deck. The most used this could see would be in some kind of an Evolve Shaman deck. You want to evolve this, you get 5/5 and you evolve this into a 6-drop. And the balance of cost and profit at this point is actually pretty good. It's another question whether this is still strong enough to see play, but this one has some potential in Evolve Shaman. A new very weird epic minion, Gurubashi Offering, a 1-mana 0/2. At the start of your turn, destroy this and gain 8 armor. So if your opponent just trades into this, you get nothing. It has to live first, and then you get 8 armor. So this is completely useless. Then an interesting beast, Helpless Hatchling, a 1-mana 1/1 with a death rattle reduced cost of a beast in your hand by 1. Reducing the cost of something in your hand is always interesting. Maybe you can compile some sort of combos around this. Maybe you can gain a tempo advantage with this. But it being just 1-mana 1/1 does hold it back a little bit, because you want to play like Diamole as your 1-drop. And you probably want to play Springpaw as a 1-drop if you're playing with heavy beast synergies. In Hunt, for example. And then with Springpaw's Rush and the Rush links you can do nice things. And if you're playing something like a Druid, you will rather ramp up than use a discount on a beast. So while the effect is interesting, I don't currently see where this could actually go. A new Death Rattle minion, Rumbletusk Shaker. 4-mana 3/2 with a Death Rattle to summon a 3/2 Rumbletusk Breaker. Yeah, I would rather play a Serenite Chain Gang, to be honest. This one, on the other hand, I'm pretty interested in this one. Excited is maybe too strong of a word, because it's not obviously good. But it's interesting. 4-mana 3/5, Regenerating Tug. At the start of your turn, restore 2 health to this minion. And we have not had this sort of minions that recurringly heal themselves before. This could do well with Light Wardens, this could do well with Happy Ghouls. If the opponent cannot remove it immediately and that 5 health means that it's pretty sturdy, then you might be able to take multiple value trades with this as it keeps healing itself up. It's a bit too bad that it's at the start of the turn and not the end of the turn. Because if you take a trade with this, then the opponent gets a chance to answer before it gets the first heal. Still, I think this is one of the more interesting common cards in the set. Although I suppose this common card is even more interesting. 2-mana 0/2, Scarab Egg. Death Rattle, summon 3 1/1 Scarabs. So there's been a problem. Okay, where do we get the tokens? There are some token support cards around, but where do the tokens come from? There's not been a lot of token generation. Well, this is token generation. You can use this with a Grim Rally, you can use this with a Sanguine Reveler, you might use this with a Ravenous Terror decks, you could build an egg deck, Devilsaur Egg, Scarab Egg, Terror decks. This is actually coming together. There is a possibility to build some kind of a token egg style Warlock deck. So this one, very interesting. Serpent Ward, a neutral totem, 2-mana 0/2. At the end of your turn, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. Well, this would synergize with various end of turn effects, so double your end of turn effects, boom boom, deal 4 damage to enemy hero, but on the other hand, aggressive decks generally don't want to do that sort of thing. It is kind of a 2-mana deal 2 damage to face spell that also keeps giving unless it's removed. And it's a totem, so maybe there are some totem synergies in Shaman. I would not count this card out from some kind of aggressive Shaman build. Shield Breaker, a neutral minion, 2-mana 2/1 with a battle cry, silence an enemy minion with taunt. Well, this is slightly less useless than the one that we had before, silence enemy minion with death rattle, because you're often wanting to silence taunt minions anyway. But also it's a pretty heavy death rattle meta, so you're often also in a position where you want to silence death rattle minions. So is that 1-mana comparison between this and the Ironbeak Owl, is that going to be worth it? Maybe for some aggro deck, but I don't think it is going to be. Spelled Zerker, a neutral 2-mana 2/3, okay, that's a decent stat line. Has spell damage +2 while damaged. Intriguing. So you could ping this if you're a mage and you could get +2 spell damage at the cost of quite a lot of tempo. Or maybe you're a warrior, but if you're a warrior, what do you do with that spell damage? There are not that many direct damage spells around. If you were to play a mage and you want to play some kind of aggressive mage, then you would rather maybe play Archaeologist and the Secrets. This is a card that definitely has some potential. It has a good stat line for a 2-drop. It has a special effect, but that special effect might be too hard to trigger to really make use of it. Wardbringer, a 1-mana 2/1 shaman card. Battle Cry. If you played 2 spells this turn, deal 2 damage. I'm not quite sure where this one is going to fit in. Maybe there is some kind of spell-heavy aggro shaman. It probably would not be a Malygos shaman though. Malygos shaman kind of wants to go off in the end, and having 1 mana 2 damage, which doesn't benefit from spell damage because it's a Minion Battle Cry, doesn't really help there. But if there's some kind of an aggressive shaman build that just shoots a lot of spells to face, has some minions that go face, then 1 mana 2 damage to face and you get a minion on the board. Might be interesting for that kind of a deck. This is a card that looks really interesting. Rogue class spell, Stolen Steel, 2 mana, discover a weapon from another class. So you can discover twigs, you can discover vine cleavers, you can discover Arcanite Reapers. There's definitely a bunch of interesting weapons out there, and because the effect is a discover, that means that you have a pretty good chance to pick up something good with this. The thing is though, Rogue as a class already has some pretty good weapons of its own. It has stuff like Kingsbane and stuff like Necrum Blade, so obviously Stolen Steel doesn't go into all Rogue archetypes. And also 2 mana just to get that weapon to you, so it's pretty low tempo, and Rogue usually wants to play a high tempo game, so that's another issue. But the effect is fairly powerful, so it's possible that there is some kind of a mid-range style Rogue deck that would be interested in this. Finally, we have some more free shaman support. Icecream Peddler, 4 mana 3/5 with a battle cry. If you control a frozen minion, gain 8 armor. Splendid. Free shaman. No, I think it's still going to be a meme. This might allow for a bit more time, a bit more mid-range approach, a bit slower approach. Buys you time so that you can actually get those free synergies online and then you go for some big swings, but I don't think this card is going to be enough to make that archetype a thing. If you had access to tons of freezes on your own minions on demand, then obviously a 4 mana card with these stats that gives you 8 armor, it's potentially more powerful than something like a Shield Maiden was. But I don't think any class has the relevant number of freezes at the moment. That was the remainder. Not a very impressive set of cards, although there was some token support and some regenerating trolls, so there were a couple of interesting pieces here. In the coming days I will take a look at how all of this combines into potential decks and potential archetypes, so stay tuned for that one. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more.